Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to show you this interesting video clip. This is of Republican Matt Gaetz from Florida. I want to show you this and how it showcases how he sounds pretty darn progressive in this clip. Here it is.
McConnell, McCarthy, Cheney, they're all smart people, right? They know when they attack the president, that makes it harder for us to win elections. But to them, at times, that's less important than the ability to raise and win elections. But what they want to do is raise and direct corporate money. What runs Washington is corporate PAC money. And there are too many people in Republican leadership right now who will do anything, who will sell out anyone, including former President Trump, if it means they get back in the good graces of corporate America that has gone totally woke left.
I mean, that's Matt Gaetz. He is a Republican from Florida. You know, he's a Trump supporting Republican from Florida. And there he is calling out his fellow GOP members for corporate PAC money, saying all they want is their corporate PAC money and they'll do anything to get their corporate PAC money. And that's what it all comes down to. How great would that be if the squad actually called out, you know, like Nancy Pelosi or any of the other leadership in the Democratic Party? We're not hearing them calling them out anymore. You know, they did when they were running for office, but once they got there, they all started to just fall in line. They went into the fold. They did whatever Mama Bear wanted. They didn't want to fight her. They instead decided to fight somebody else. They fought all these other people who are actually, when you start talking to them on the ground, you find out that they want the same things as those who say they're progressives. These other people that are maybe on the other side of the aisle, they want the same things. They want to end corruption in government. They believe they have a government on the take and they want it to come back and work for the American people. They believe their government is working too much for corporate America and not for them. And they want that kind of change. But you've got people like in the squad and they're going around and they're actually demonizing these people, calling them all racist, calling them all white nationalists, saying that they're all a bunch of domestic terrorists and that we need to be watching them and taking them down. We need to silence all their voices. We need to rein in on their media. We got to do all of these terrible things to these people, even though they're actually sharing much of the same message. That is what's insane about this. That was Matt Gaetz. He's a Republican. He is the first Republican to actually swear off corporate PAC money. This is now becoming more of a trend. If you have HBO, you should definitely watch. It's a documentary called The Swamp. It features Matt Gaetz. It also features Ken Buck from Colorado. Democrat Ro Khanna is in it quite a bit. And he actually partners with Matt Gaetz on a lot of different legislation. And you actually see where that there's this shift and change happening inside of the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party by nature is slow to change. It's the party of no, right? They're conservatives. They don't like change. They try to hold things back a bit. And sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes you want somebody to say, you know what, let's take a beat before we do something kind of radical. And other times, because they are so slow to change, it's extremely annoying, right? It's like, gosh, get with the times already. We need to make some progress here. So conservatives in some way are good because you want somebody that's not going to allow for radical change all the time. You need that pushback a little bit. Sometimes their pushback is way too much. But because conservatives by nature are conservative, they are slower to change. So the Republican Party by nature, people inside that Republican Party are going to be slower to come to grips with the fact that the government is on the take, that the corporate PAC money is running Washington. And that is something that Democrats have been screaming for quite some time. I would say definitely since 2016, since Bernie Sanders really shined a light on this. We see, this is much more in the mainstream narrative now since 2016. So it took Republicans about 4 years, and maybe you could even argue maybe 2 years. Once Trump was elected in the very beginning of 2016, those first couple of years, the Republican Party was still operating as usual, business as usual. And then a lot of them were handed, their packing papers and they were told to get out. And new people were brought into Washington, people that were more supportive of Trump and wanting to drain the swamp. And that narrative kind of started taking over the Republican Party. And that ultimately has been a really good thing for the Republican Party. They still don't know where they are. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how the Republican Party shakes out. I have some hope that the Republican Party will kind of go through this metamorphosis, this sort of progressive change, this shift where they also get on board with, we need to get the big corporate money out of Washington. So I'm really thrilled to see guys like Matt Gaetz saying this. I'm a fan of his for that reason. I just think this guy is really going to help reform the Republican Party in that way. And my big fear with that is that as more Republicans take on that narrative, as we've seen what just happened in this last election, as Republicans start to take on a more leftist position, what happens to people that are supposed to be on the left? They move to the right, right? We saw this with the election when you finally had Republicans for the first time ever saying election fraud or our elections aren't quite secure. We need to do something more for our elections. Democrats are the ones who've historically been saying that. People on the left have always been saying our elections need tightening up. Even in 2016, you had all these Democrats saying it was these Russians that were able to infiltrate our election and our elections aren't secure enough. And we've got rigging, the voting machines, that everything that we heard in 2020 from Donald Trump and the Trump supporters, literally almost identical word for word we were hearing in 2016 coming from Democrats. And now Republicans are on board and they say, yeah, okay, something's wrong with the system. Things aren't right. Suddenly, the Democrats who are all about making those kinds of changes are not only going silent, but they're actually antagonistic to the idea. So my fear is, as guys like Matt Gaetz and Ken Buck and others in Washington on the right start to take on that, we need to fight corporate power, as we're starting to see, right? We're seeing this with big tech. They're the ones that are saying we got to fight big tech. They're now a monster. We need to actually do some trust busting, and we need to go in there and regulate them. We were hearing Republicans starting to say these things, and now that we're hearing Republicans say these things, what are we seeing happening on the left? The left is moving to the right. And we're even seeing these real establishment Republicans, the Jeff Flakes of the world and Cindy McCain, the McCains, all of them moving to the Democratic Party, saying, well, if this is what the Republican Party is, then I don't want anything about it, right? They're moving over to the Democratic side saying, well, I want to be back with my elites. I belong with elites. I want to be with the elites. And this party represents the elites because the Democratic Party, make no mistake, they absolutely represent the elites. And now the Republicans are representing the people at the bottom of the totem pole who are, underrepresented. People view them as backwoods, hillbillies with no education, who are ignorant. And now that is who the Republican Party represents, the common person. And Democrats are representing the educated elite. And so, I'm really interested to see what is going to happen with this Republican Party, how it's shifting, how it's morphing, how guys like Matt Gaetz are helping that process along, and interested to see what that is also causing to have happen on the Democratic side of the aisle. You've got so-called progressives no longer acting like progressives. They're instead pointing their fingers at the very common people who they claim they were supposed to be supporting, but they no longer support them because they have the wrong color skin. I don't know what you call that, but I call that racism. So I'm really interested to see this metamorphosis happen. I am all for it. I'm here for it. I am all for it. I'm totally supportive of it. And I hope to see more and more of these Republicans come out and do this, and more Democrats. I mean, listen, I'm still looking at the Democrats who are also coming out and saying that they want that kind of change. I don't trust now Justice Democrats or the Squad. I don't know, they've gone in a different direction that I don't think is actually truly what the progressive movement was meant to be. But I hope that there's maybe another movement that sort of comes along that says, no, we just want to stay hyper-focused on this. We need to end corruption in our government. We need to end the fact that these people who we send to Washington are supposed to be regulating these industries, and instead they're taking money from those industries that they're supposed to be regulating. That is not working, and we can see the effects of that in the American life. We are unable anymore to achieve the American dream. A person can no longer buy that house with a white picket fence, have the 2-car garage, have the minivan and the stay-at-home husband and the 3 kids that play soccer. That is no longer something that's obtainable to a lot of people. People are pushing off having families. They're unable to buy homes. They have to have 2 parents working in order to support their families. the American dream, that what we all said we were going to have when we got older, is not as feasible anymore. And that is what is pissing off Americans, quite frankly. And we have to be hyper focused on that. And the only way to do that is to get money out of politics. It is not you versus me. It is us versus them. And we need to remember that the them are the bought-off politicians that are sitting in Washington. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you have not signed up for my email newsletter, please do that so I can let you know the happenings with the show and some other places where content may be posted. And so sign up for that newsletter. You can just go to my website to sign up. Go to KimIverson.com. That'll have you give you the form to sign up. It is, a free newsletter. I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to sell your data or your info or anything like that. You can trust me. So that is it for the night, guys. Thank you so much for joining me.